Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Cormorant Productions, here to talk about This Is Us, Season 6, Episode 11, titled Saturday in the Park. The episode's description reads as follows. Rebecca and Miguel's anniversary barbecue does not go as planned. The episode was directed by Chris Koch, who did 10 other episodes of the series. And the episode was written by Dan Fogelman and KJ Steinberg. Before going any further, I will tell you a couple of things. 1. This is not a spoiler-free video, so if you haven't yet watched the episode, please go and check it out, and then watch my video. Secondly, if you like this video and want to support the channel, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to my channel. If you have regularly watched my videos on this series, then I'm pretty sure that you know my opinion of the Kate and Toby storyline that has played out this season. That I haven't been a fan, and that I haven't exactly wanted to watch this thread play out in the first place, which is why it is extra meaningful when I tell you that this was an absolutely excellent episode of television that I never want to watch again. It was well directed, well acted, and well written. Just all in all, well done. We begin this episode with Baby Jack in his crib. Baby Jack, played by Johnny Kincaid, which is an awesome name. This kid has a bright future ahead of him, solely based on his name. He's also a little scene stealer in this episode. Seriously, I don't know how they got a kid this young to recite lines like this. Anyway, the kid is in his crib listening to his parents argue, and we see from his perspective. He can't see at all, he just sees little blurry shapes, which gets this episode started off on a very nicely directed moment. This is an all-in-all excellent episode for Chris Koch, the director of this episode. I very rarely feel the need to specifically call out directors of these episodes, but he did a fantastic job. The scene emphasizes the fact that Toby and Kate's relationship and how far it's sunk is having a definite impact on the young Jack. They end up taking Jack to the park, and along the way, they sing the park song that we were introduced to a couple of episodes, where we saw Gregory, played by Timothy Osmond, for the first time this season. Something that I did not point out in that episode, so I have to rectify that situation here. This is the only time in the episode where Kate and Toby seem like a happy, functioning couple. And credits. When we come back, we are in the 5-year-old timeline for the Big Three. Rebecca and Jack are about to go on their 10th year anniversary dinner, and they are being left with a babysitter. I'm going to go ahead and sum up this plot right here and now, and then leave it be. I was extremely grateful for the past timeline, even if it didn't connect, which it ultimately ended up doing, because it broke up the tension of the current present-day timeline. Jack and Rebecca go to dinner, where Rebecca gets extremely drunk, and Mandy Moore is both beautiful and extremely funny as playing a drunk person. Mandy Moore is one of the many actors that were supremely great in this episode. While at dinner, they get a call from the babysitter, who apparently got locked in the closet by the Big Three. Now, I'm not exactly sure how the babysitter called the Pearsons in the first place, because cell phones were not exactly a thing at this time. Did the Pearsons happen to have a phone in the closet? We will probably never know the true answer to that question. The ultimate point to these scenes is that the Big Three, even at this age, banded together to protect their sister Kate against the evil babysitter. We cut to the present day with Rebecca already at Kate's house, trying to help with the preparations for the anniversary party, only to get chastised by Kate. And Rebecca says, with frustration, that she's only trying to help. And it's clear that the frustration of her illness is taking its toll. Kate recommends removing a doll that is sitting on their table, which Kate considers creepy, but Miguel points out that the doll is a Puerto Rican tradition that sat on their table during their initial wedding. And I do consider it odd that the fact that this episode is, in the episode's description, listed being about Miguel and Rebecca, but it almost has absolutely nothing to do with Miguel. Miguel is backgrounded for a lot of this episode, as he is a lot of this series. But looking at the episode titles this year, we do have an episode titled Miguel coming up, which presumably would go into how Rebecca and Miguel ultimately ended up getting together. We still haven't quite finished that story, though what we had in the college age timeline was a very satisfying look at how they came apart originally. Kate ends up talking to Kevin about the fight he had with Toby, or rather she had with Toby. Something that doesn't please Toby at all, even though Kevin is living in the same house and would very likely have known that the two of them had gotten into a fight. Toby comes in from cooking, and the tension between Kate and Toby is very clear from the get-go, and it does not get any better as the episode progresses. Toby, for the record, is cooking on the green egg of doom. That signifies the end of Toby and Kate, even though that was really done a couple of episodes ago. Once again, if I were someone selling a product, I would pay this show to not sell my products, because every time they do, something bad happens as a result of the product, even though for the most part the green egg doesn't actually have anything to do with what happens in this episode. After an awkward conversation with Toby, Jack is sad that he's not going to the park because it's Saturday. But they're not going to the park because of the anniversary party. Jack and Kate hear the doorbell ring, and Jack insists on helping to open the door, which Kate has taught him to do. And this is a little bit of foreshadowing for what is to come. It turns out to be Randall and Beth. The kids are nowhere to be seen. They opted to stay home with Beth's mom, which is an interesting reference given the fact that we haven't seen Beth's mom all season. And I'm very curious if this has anything to do with Felicia Rashad's controversial comments defending Bill Cosby in the wake of his release. Kate gives Randall an extra long hug, which is no doubt because of the fact that her life and marriage are completely falling apart. Beth gives them privacy, and Kate says as much, and mentions the fact that Toby seems to be annoyed with Kevin over every little thing, and she is afraid that Toby is actually going to end up killing Kevin. She begs Randall to get Kevin out of there, to give Toby a little bit of a break. This is, of course, not going to help in the slightest. Things are still going to go badly, but hey, at least she's trying. The idea, the dream, that any of this is going to get any better during the course of the episode is killed pretty much right away when Kate's ceiling starts leaking because of a plumbing problem that Toby's dad tried to fix last season instead of getting a plumber. Toby's metaphor that he used last season about water pressure never being seen until it's too late comes to fruition here. And the real villain of this episode, the real person to blame for everything that happens, is of course Toby's dad. Because he clearly didn't fix this very well. That's not my joke. That was something I actually saw in the forums. We cut to the past timeline, which I'm of course going to skip because I've already talked about it as much as I'm going to. Back in the present day, we see Kevin and Randall going to pick up the twins. Or at least that's the idea. They're discussing Toby and Kate's marriage. Randall had no idea that things were getting that bad. And of course, Kevin did because he's had a front row seat. Kevin, by the way, is closing on a house of his own, finally. But as it turns out, the twins have plans because Kevin is 2 hours early picking them up. Madison is excited to see Randall, who she hasn't seen probably since last season sometime. Kevin, as Madison departs, goes to visit Isaac, who is rummaging through Madison's jewelry. But as it turns out, not for nefarious purposes, but because he's not trying to size her ring. Isaac intends to propose. We cut back to the House of Doom and Gloom, already in progress, as we have an insanely layered scene here. There is just so much going on. Jack is crying, Kate and Toby are bickering over the leak situation. Miguel is just trying to be his helpful self and resolve the problem. Rebecca is feeling useless and frustrated. The tension in this scene is high. It's all realistic. It's all perfectly painful. Toby asks Miguel to take care of the situation because his wife doesn't think he can, and he goes out to cook on the green egg. Kate insists that he at least take baby Jack with him, and Rebecca raises her voice, asking, "Can I at least put Jack's shoes on?" She's upset for multiple reasons. The obvious tension in the building, and the fact that nobody is letting her do anything on account of her illness. The writing, the acting, everything is just perfect in this scene. It's 100% not fun to watch, but this is what the end of a relationship looks like. And we're setting up even more breadcrumbs with Rebecca learning about what shoes Jack uses to go to the park. Beth joins Toby with a drink, trying to make him feel better. And the only person that could be out on that porch, other than Miguel, but he's a little busy at the moment, is Beth. Because Beth, like Toby, is an outsider in the family, the tight-knit family. Beth ends up talking about how she moved for Randall and his career, something that Kate is not willing to do, which Toby points out, to save their marriage, with a pained expression on his face. And though I don't fully agree with Toby's position, Chris Sullivan does a fantastic job in this episode, just like everybody else. Every actor is on their A game in this episode, including Johnny Kincaid as Jack. I can never get enough of saying that name. It is just superbly awesome. They should have a series based off him, a superhero series. Johnny Kincaid as Johnny Kincaid. But not in this series, because the true superhero is Rebecca. Speeding through a past timeline scene, we get back to present day. With Randall and Kevin. Kevin is upset at the news that Isaac is about to propose to Madison, and he thinks his entire life is changing. And then Randall asks, but really, is it? You were unable to say during your wedding, which is the reason that wedding was called off by Madison in the first place. What has changed? Are you able to say those words now? Do you feel that? Are you in fact in love with Madison? I have no doubt that Kevin cares about Madison. She is in fact the mother of his children, but he is not in love with her. He no doubt has an affection for her. He definitely likes her, but he is not in love with her. Or maybe he is. Maybe he just has a severe intimacy issue which prevents him from saying it, something that has never been hinted at during the course of this series. That hasn't been Kevin's problem. Kevin's problem is being the human wrecking ball, as Cassidy pointed out not that long ago. He can't make up his mind what he wants. He can't sit still long enough to actually settle down, among other issues. And in the process, he wreaks havoc on other women's lives, and that of his family for that matter. He certainly hasn't been helping with Toby and Kate's problems, though he is not the main cause. Randall suggests that they take a long ride to get the thought, any thought, of doing anything about Madison out of his head. He goes to text her, and Randall slaps the phone out of Kevin's hand and says, "You are not going to engage in your usual self-destructive tendencies with your ex-baby mama. You are going to leave it alone and take this long ride until the thought exits your mind." Randall slapping Kevin's phone out of his hand made me laugh, not gonna lie. But Randall is ever the wise one in this scene, and in fact, throughout the series. We cut to Toby and Jack. Toby is holding Jack over the green egg as he's cooking, and we hear dialogue that we heard from a couple of episodes ago with older Jack, and we think that this might result in serious injury, but of course it doesn't. The green egg has absolutely nothing to do with what happens to Jack in the end. In the house, the situation is about to get worse, as now there's also a water leak in their bedroom, which causes Beth to go and get Toby. Kate continues to snipe at Toby and insists that he help, while putting Jack down, but he has absolutely no idea what to do with Jack. He eventually ends up putting Jack in the room, and as Kate is pressuring him, he closes the gate, but of course it doesn't latch. He didn't wait for the sound. So the tension in Kate and Toby's marriage, the stress, the anxiety leads to a moment of carelessness. The situation between Kate and Toby is so toxic that it is now becoming dangerous. And I cannot judge Toby for this. Yes, it's a mistake, but I could easily see myself doing the same thing in his shoes, in the same situation. But nevertheless, that one is on Toby. The plumber comes to fix the pipes. Kate forgets to unlock the door, and Jack, because he got out of the gate, is now leaving the house. That one's on Kate. If either of these adults do what they're supposed to do, none of what happens after this happens. When things calm down, Toby realizes that Jack is not in his room, and it begins a madcap search for Jack in the house. But of course, we already know that he isn't there. We cut back to Jack, who is making his way down the sidewalk using the song that Kate has taught him. He gets to the end of the road and waits for the cars to clear, and then gets across the street, just as he was taught. Well, I gotta say, I'm impressed by Johnny Kincaid as Jack. That is one smart cookie, that's for sure. I am significantly less impressed by the Los Angeles traffic, none of whom notice that a 3-year-old, or maybe a 2-year-old, I don't even know how old Jack is at this point. Either way, this is not a good situation. But they don't notice that a young kid is unattended crossing the street. Several cars drive by and do nothing about this situation. But I'm pretty sure he's going to be okay because he has a cameraman right there, so how bad can it be? The tension is rising back at the house as they gradually realize that Jack, isn't in it. The dawning horror of what is going on here is affecting everyone. And once again, we have a scene of total chaos of all the adults trying to figure out where the heck Jack went, and Kate realizes that the door is unlocked, something that she takes responsibility for when she's talking to Toby here, but she won't later, which is interesting. Rebecca, meanwhile, realizes that Jack's boots are not there, and she takes this tiny little detail and realizes exactly where Jack is going. And like a damn superhero, she books out of the house and runs towards the park to get Jack. She has the presence of mind to realize that what shoes were missing, and recalls earlier what Jack had said, and realizes where Jack is going. And then 2 scenes later, she can't get basic information on a form and needs Kevin's help. This is an overall layered and amazing episode, honestly. We cut to Jack at the park. He's reached the end of the road, the end of the song. He gets to the swing, and now he has no more song to go. He drops his walking stick, the one he uses to feel around as a blind kid, and then just starts running in a random direction. And unfortunately, this random direction includes stairs, which is how Jack ultimately got that scar that he has as an adult. Frankly, if that's the worst he got from this experience, I would consider that a win, because he easily could have gotten squashed by a car. He could easily be kidnapped or dead. Rebecca ends up finding him in the park. 2 adults are attending to him. And, I love this episode and all that, but there are a couple of questions. Like, for instance, the authorities wouldn't be interested in what happened here. No DCF involvement? Because I think they would be. We cut to a hospital scene, which wasn't too much fun to watch. We have Toby and Kate going home silently with their son, looking at each other, glancing at each other, but not saying a word. Kate puts Jack to bed while Rebecca watches on. She soon joins a very distraught Toby in the kitchen, and he says, in almost way of apology, that he thought the gate had latched. But Kate doesn't want to have this conversation, or what is soon to be an argument, right there. Instead, she wants to go outside at night and subject the neighbors to this particular argument. And they have a big fight. The fight, I'm not going to get into. It's not really relevant what they were fighting about, because what they were fighting about isn't really what they were fighting about. I will say that while Kate earlier had taken responsibility for her part in what happened, here she isn't doing that at all. They are both unfair to each other, and that's just how these things go. This is what the end of a relationship looks like, as I said before. Kate and Randall roll up. They end up getting involved. They have no business in this argument whatsoever. Randall is at least trying to play peacemaker, while Kevin is actively getting into the middle of the argument, taking Kate's side, of course. But Randall just wants it to stop. And we have a very obvious shot of the big 3 standing on one side and Toby on the other, which is not lost on Toby, because to him, that's how things have been the entirety of their relationship. We cut to Madison and Kevin. Kevin is dropping off the twins. Actually, no, he's not. He's going there at the house because he had a very bad day. And after what happened to Jack, he needed to see them. Madison and Kevin have a conversation about emergency contacts, which Kevin suggests he wants to release her from emergency contact duty. And while they're talking about this, there's a subtext here. They are not talking about what they are talking about. And they both know it. Madison thinks Elijah is going to propose, and she's excited. And Kevin decides in that moment to let her go, to be the mature adult and do the right thing. This seemingly closes the book on Madison and Kevin. Will it? We'll see. There's only 6 episodes left to this series. After a scene of watching Toby wander around the house, clearly lost, we have another scene between Kevin and Randall, which is delightful. Their brief interactions in this episode were fun, and a break from the tension that was most evident throughout much of the episode. Kate happens upon the scene, and they comfort her. She tells them that the doctor asked Jack why he went to the park, and he said that's where his parents are the most happy, when they aren't fighting. Kate declares that she does not think that Toby and her are going to make it. I consulted my magic 8-ball, and it said, outlook not so good. Toby, clearly distraught, enters Jack's room, where Rebecca waits for him. She doesn't say anything to him, but she does show him empathy, and I wish she had stayed, because while the brothers comfort Kate, Toby also could have used some comfort. Rebecca leaves the scene, and Toby sits next to his son, and he starts sobbing. His marriage is going up in smoke, and he's still very upset with what happened to his son, for his part in what happened to his son. And the Emmy goes to Chris Sullivan, or at least it should. Anyway, that's all I got for you. This was a fantastic episode of this series. Probably one of the best ones of the series, the season, which I did not expect, in what realistically has been a kind of disappointing season. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my 2 Facebook pages, the Corman Productions one, as well as the Corman Productions This Is Us discussion page. You can buy me a copy, which is a new way to support content creators such as myself. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to my channel. This is Dave from Corman Productions, signing off.